Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Facebook Live Discussions. I'm Tariq Kadan, and this is Settle, Thrive, and Belong, where we focus on the newcomer journey and discuss the challenges newcomers face. In today's sessions, we will address some of the challenges our communities are facing and talk about where mental health and social media intersect. Today, we mark over 16 months since the pandemic started in Canada. This pandemic has changed our lives in ways we have not thought of before. It impacted our economies, workplace, schools, and even how we interact with our loved ones. The COVID-19 pandemic disturbed a global labor market during 2020. The short-term consequences were sudden and often severe. Millions of people lost their jobs, and others rapidly adjusted to working from home as offices closed down. Many other workers were deemed essential and continued to work in hospitals and grocery stores, on garbage trucks, and in warehouses, yet under new protocols to reduce the spread of the novel coronavirus. Fortunately, many of us were able to adjust to the new changes and work from home with the help of something very valuable, the internet. Has this pandemic happened 20 years ago? We have had no idea on how we could have handled it. However, we are lucky enough that we had the tools to do almost everything online. As you know, we are able to run our businesses, work from home, watch our favorite movies, read new books, buy a new outfit, and even order a full cart of groceries to be delivered to our doors. We were able to order our medications and even visit our doctors virtually, all in a tap of a button. Most importantly, we were able to go against our human nature and its fundamental need to connect with others. And we, for most parts, were able to replace the in-person connecting experience to a virtual one. For 99.9 of human existence on Earth, on average, we knew about 60 to 100 people throughout our lifetime. And for as long as we existed, we've used storytelling as a way to connect with others. We shared our stories with our loved ones and those who we deeply trusted. We listened to others and other people's stories, imagined and what they shared and empathized with it. Today, we have thousands of friends and followers on different social media platforms, most of which we have not seen in ages, and some that we only met once. Many of those we call friends we may never see in our life again. However, we listen to their opinions and almost receive them as facts. We value their approval and whether they like what we post or not. We can even see what everyone is up to by watching their stories on social media. But is social media really social, or is it social at all? The reality is, we are actually more disconnected than ever. We have the highest rates of loneliness, depression, and anxiety ever before. And as the American psychiatrist Edward Howell puts it, never in human history have our brains had to work with so much information as they do today. We have a generation of people who are so busy processing the information received from all directions that they are losing the ability to think and feel, he says. I remember before the pandemic how most of us were discussing what should the amount of time spent on screen looks like, and most of us were hoping not to exceed 2 hours per day. Um, Today, according to a Canadian study, the average screen time for Canadians is 13.1 hours. That is 3/4 of our time awake a day. This drastic change will not come without challenges. Today, my guest and I will be discussing some of those challenges and share some helpful tips on how we can stay well during these times. My guest today is Glorana, who I share the same position with and work very, very closely with. Glorana is the mental health and wellness lead at North York Community House. She has a background in mental health and completed her bachelor's specializing in mental health. She is doing her master's of social work at University of Toronto to become a therapist. Glorana has been doing mental health work in her community for the past 6 years. She works primarily with newcomers, immigrants, and refugees, and runs a grassroots mental health initiative for newcomers and immigrants called Wellness Cafe. As an immigrant herself, Glorana understands the unique mental health challenges faced by immigrants, especially those with social media, which brings her here today to share her experiences on this topic. Glorana, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Tarek, for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for that introduction.
You're very welcome. You know, it's been now over 16 months since our first lockdown. How are you doing through all of this, and how have you been navigating through it?
Yeah, it's been a very, very long time since this lockdown happened. And honestly, it's been quite a journey for me. I've had my ups and downs throughout this entire time, and some parts are really good. I think, I found more time to spend at home with my family, which I didn't have before. I learned so many different and new skills. I had time to finally start cooking, and I learned how to bake. I found time to complete projects around the house that I left for years. But at the same time, I think, there came a point and many times where I felt very burnt out and exhausted from all of this. And I'm sure many people out there can relate to these feelings because I was working from home. I was doing my master's full time from home, and just everything from home and from the same space. So everything really got to me at one point. But I'm glad now that things are finally slowly opening up, and I'm looking forward to this new normal that we will have.
Yeah, what you shared is a reality for a lot of people, right? We all had those challenges, and thank you so much for sharing that part. I, our topic today is about social media and mental health during and post COVID. But before we jump into that, I really would love to hear a little bit about your story and why today's topic matters to you.
Mhm. I think for me, what really made me realize the impact of social media and mental health was a time in my life a couple of years ago where my skin randomly started to break out. And before this time in my life, I've always had very clear skin. I've never had any issues or any problems with my skin before. So having this happen all of a sudden, it really impacted my mental health, and my self-esteem. And then with all of this happening, I would go on social media, and as I would scroll, all I would see is these flawless images of skin and of other women, and looking so good. And as much as I didn't want to, I would end up comparing myself and my skin and how I look to all of these images, even though I think I knew that these images were edited. I knew there were filters on them. I knew there was layers of makeup and editing, and that's not how their real skin might actually look. But when you're in such a state and in such a condition, it's only natural to compare yourself. And looking at that all the time with what I was going through just made me feel very, very insecure about myself, to a point where I just didn't want to go out. I just didn't want to see people. I didn't want to interact with my friends, with my family, because I didn't have that confidence in myself and my skin. And anytime I had to, I had no other option but to go out. I would have to wear layers of makeup to even feel the confidence to leave the house. And it was really this time in my life that made me realize how much social media can impact our mental health, and made me wonder how much it's impacting other people out there.
Wow, that story. Thank you so much for sharing it. It resonate with me, and I'm sure it resonate with so many other people who um, have experienced, the isolation, the fear, the disconnection that social media could cause, especially when we compare, our weakest moments or most vulnerable moments, and the times where, like, let's face it, we usually go and scroll down on social media when we're not feeling emotionally well. Sometimes we're trying to escape or distract ourselves, and then in those very vulnerable moments, we end up seeing the highlights of everyone's life, and the most beautiful things that are happening in their lives. Um, and we make that conversion, and I'm guilty of it myself. Um, and it's it's insane to see how the impact of it, not just mentally, but they also could manifest in physical health. Um, so thank you for sharing that story and shedding the light on um, that very reality of what social media could do. Um, but our program is really focused on newcomers, and my question to you is, why is today's topic um, is important to newcomers, and why is it important to talk about those issues, especially for newcomers?
Yeah, I believe it's very important to talk about this issue because social media is something that not only affects newcomers, but also almost every single person in the world today, because of the pandemic and because of our reliance on technology, as you mentioned in our in the introduction. Social media is a tool not just to stay connected with people socially, but it's also become, a platform for business, for sharing your lifestyle, and so much more than that. And on one hand, having these social connections through social media can help us, ease our stress, our anxiety, and prevent us from feeling lonely. And I think it's important for newcomers, especially because they're able to stay connected with their families and their friends through social media who might be across the world, right? And they don't live with them, they can't see them every day. So social media is their only way to stay connected. And I think it also gives them the ability to connect socially with new people in a new country, because they might not know anyone here, might not have any friends. And sometimes connecting through social media is actually a less intimidating way to approach someone and get to know them rather than face to face, right? And I think social media also buys you a bit of time and helps you overcome certain fears or barriers that you may have as a newcomer with communication. So, for example, you might use Google Translate when you're chatting with someone online or having a conversation to help you find the right English word or to translate what they said to you. But in person, it sometimes might not be the most appropriate to pull out your phone and say, hey, stop talking, let me, search up what this word means and get back to you. Or even sometimes, some newcomers might be afraid to speak in person, face to face, because of embarrassment that they might have an accent or they might not speak English good enough. But when you're communicating online through social media, I think for newcomers, it helps you overcome all those fears and those barriers.
All of those are real challenges, and you really spoke to the truth of it, right? And I guess, what are the challenges newcomer face when it comes to social media and its impact on their mental health?
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. I could go on with this answer forever, and I think it just doesn't impact newcomers only. It also impacts everyone else, everyone's mental health. Even though social media was a tool designed to help us connect with one another, ironically, if we spend too much time and engage too much with it, it can actually have the opposite effects, right? It can make us feel more lonely, more isolated, and increase the mental health challenges that we experience. So first of all, I want to highlight that social media can make us feel not as good about our life, our achievements, our appearance. As I was mentioning with my story earlier, right? Even though we're aware and we know that people are editing the images they're posting and enhancing what they're posting, it still can make us feel insecure because it's only natural for us to compare our lives and how we look and what we have to what we see online. And similarly, people tend to highlight the best moments of their life on social media. People rarely post about the low moments or the hardships that they go through, but yet we still tend to compare our lives to what we're seeing online. If we're going through a challenge or we're going through something in our life, and other people are, posting their accomplishments or their happy moments, it only makes us feel worse when we're constantly seeing that online. And for newcomers, I think this is even more important because as a newcomer, you're starting from scratch in a new country with new people. And most of the time, you're starting with nothing. And it's very difficult, especially in these countries, to immediately get the job of your dreams, to get the home of your dreams, the lifestyle of your choice. But if you're constantly on social media as a newcomer and you might be following people who are not newcomers, who've lived here for 20, 30 years or even longer, and you see them posting, graduating from the best schools or getting, really good jobs or buying the house of their dreams, it can feel like a lot of pressure to be successful very, very fast, which is not the reality, which may not have been the reality for that person posting that.
That's very true, and even the aspect that we measure success based on that, right? Like, I guess social media has played a very important part in what success should look like. Um, and as what you mentioned, it's like when you are a newcomer, you're really starting back from scratch, from zero, and everyone else could be somewhere on the spectrum, somewhere along the line, but you're really starting from zero, and at times you may not even have friends. Um, so I think there's so much reality into how we compare what's happening, and what we're seeing to our own lives. Um, what other things may stand out?
Yeah. I think social media can also cause something called FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out. So FOMO is this idea that you're always missing out on something, which is what social media makes us feel like, right? That's why we're picking up our phones every 2 minutes and refreshing and scrolling, even though there might not be major updates, because that's the way social media is designed to constantly have content, to constantly have posts, and feel like if we're not checking and our notifications or updating or refreshing, we're missing out on something that's happening. And this can, happen to a certain extent where we're actually taking risks in our own lives. Like you might be texting back or checking your phone while you're driving, or you're missing out on your sleep. You're staying up for hours at night, refreshing and stuck in the cycle on your phone and prioritizing sleep or real world relationships. Um,
Yeah, that is very true, and I guess it's that in search of novelty that we kind of want to look and find out what's happening. What would you how would you see kind of where does the fear of missing out comes from?
I think it comes back to what I was mentioning a little bit earlier is this idea, like the way social media is designed, it's designed in almost an endless way. There will always be an update, there will always be a post, there will always be a story. I've never come across a social media platform where it's like, there's no new posts, there's no new stories, there's nothing to watch or nothing to interact with. There's always something. And I think just knowing that there will always be something and there will be something more, and as you said, something new that you might not know of, it gets you very hooked onto that cycle of what's happening. Is there something new now? Like, I need to know every second. So it kind of gets us trapped into the cycle of endless content, endless information.
And just knowing that the amount of things that get uploaded to the internet, if we spend our entire lifetime actually watching, we still won't go through 1% of what exists.
Exactly.
And
There's
that's
so much.
very intense. It's
Yeah.
like the novelty is there, and we know we're in search for things novel, things that are novel and new and we haven't seen or experienced before. Makes us happy and releases the dopamine, which we're probably going to talk about that in a bit. How does all of that impact our mental health, Colorana?
Yeah. Has a lot of mental health impacts. First of all, I think there's isolation, even though it's a tool designed to reduce isolation, to help us feel more connected. But research has shown that if we use social media too much, it actually increases rather than decreasing our feelings of loneliness, right? And I think a good example to highlight that, especially with newcomers, is that as newcomers, you'll naturally be following and connecting in your social media to your home country where you come from, right? You'll be following pages or people, your family, your friends, but at the same time you'll also be seeing content. You'll be seeing the wars that are happening, the accidents that are happening, the traumatic news that's taking place back home, and constantly seeing that on your social media. It's also impacting your mental health. It's making you feel more isolated and helpless because you have no control over what's happening in your home country. You're all the way across the other end of the world and you can't even do much. And so in that example, it's actually making you feel more isolated and impacting your mental health more negatively than it is positively.
I resonate a lot with that. When I came here, same thing. I come from Syria, a country that is torn by war for the past 12 years. Um, and reality is, I checked my phone to see what's happening there, right? I have family there. I'm invested in a lot of what's happening because I want to make sure everyone's safe and what's going on. And as I said, it just made me more anxious and probably more depressed, and more isolated. And reason being is I couldn't do anything about it. I could watch it, I could consume it for hours and know every event that's taking place, every place that's getting impacted. I couldn't do anything about it. And even if I wanted to reach out to connect with the family and like to see if they were impacted by this event that took place that I saw on the news or social media. I mean, I'm halfway across the globe, right? Even timeline, it does not work. By the time I finish work and I could check all of that, my family would be long asleep. Um, so that's a very reality to how it could impact our mental health. And um, I guess, does it show in other ways outside of isolation?
Mm. Yeah, definitely. It shows in many other ways, even when it comes to stress, happiness, and depression. I think it's important to realize that social media is not a replacement for the real world, the face-to-face human connections. Because in order to, even from like a biological standpoint, in order to release certain hormones that take away stress and that make us feel happy, you have to have those in-person interactions and contact with other people. Because research actually shows that when we socialize in person, our body releases a hormone called oxytocin, and oxytocin then triggers serotonin, another chemical that moves throughout our body and causes us to feel happiness. And without these face to face interactions, we can't have that. And we can't even have the full picture of of what other people are trying to say. We can't read someone's facial cues or expressions or have eye contact that really strengthens that connections and makes us feel that presence. And when we engage in face-to-face interactions, something called mirror neurons fire in our brain. And mirror neurons are basically, these subconscious connections that occur and make a connection by mimicking someone else's movements, their facial expressions, their gestures. So, for example, if someone is smiling and we're with them in person, we automatically start smiling. It's hard to control that when someone else is smiling. It's very very unconscious. And same thing when someone is feeling a bit low, you can feel the energy in the whole room. Everyone can, right? And it somehow starts affecting everyone else's energy in that room as well. So that's all because of mirror neurons and that in-person presence that we have.
That is okay. Different things to that to me. Um, we can't replace it, and I definitely agree with you. And I guess I have a certain privilege of being able to experience life without social media,
Mhm.
previous to social media's existence, and even phone per se. Um, and that experience, it's really different. I guess now what the way how I think about it is like the coming generations are the first to ever have a phone since they're born. That's actually quite intense to think about, because
Yeah.
this becomes a part of life where, for me and you and many others who are from the older generations, we've had life before phones, we've had life before social media, and we knew what it was like, and we've experienced it. And I myself quit social media about 3 months ago or so,
Mhm.
and I couldn't be happier, to be honest. I'll talk about that later. Reality is, though, um now, in a way, we're almost replacing it, especially now during the pandemic, right? The in-person experience even harder and harder. So um but what really stood out to me is, it does not matter whether you choose the social media instead of the in-person experience. There's those chemicals that your brain for thousands of years have learned to do only in-person experience, only when you're interacting with someone else in person. And that is very important to actually think about. You mentioned that, the facial cues and the expression and the eye contact and all of those, as a newcomer myself, and when I came here, I didn't speak the language. So, like, those were things that I heavily relied on to understand what's happening around me, and to understand if the person who's talking to me is trying to help me or is going to attack me. And because most of what they were saying, I had no clue that language barrier existed. And for many newcomers, that is a reality as well. Um, how does all of that tie together in our self-esteem?
Mhm. I think when you're receiving these likes and these comments and these favorable reactions on social media, it actually releases a chemical called dopamine in the brain. And dopamine is, it's like the brain's reward and motivation chemical. It's released when we do things like eating, sleeping, exercising, listening to music. So any activities that make us feel good or give us pleasure are due to dopamine. And it's very similar with social media. Every time we get a like, a comment, or just a positive reaction, it also releases dopamine in our brain and we feel good. And then we get stuck into the cycle of feeling good when we get these likes and these comments, and we keep doing it and over again to get those feelings. And ultimately our self-worth begins to depend on how many likes, how many followers, and how many comments you're receiving. And when you don't, that makes you, that takes away that pleasure from you, right? And leaves you feeling not good. And I think what keeps us dependent on social media is knowing that the outcome is unpredictable. If we take the example of a slot machine, if the game players knew that they were never going to win any money by playing the game, they would never play. So the same thing goes for social media. We don't know how many likes the picture will get, who's going to like the picture, when people will like the picture. So this unknown outcome keeps us engaged with social media.
Uh, wow. I think you did a great job in breaking down how what dopamine is and how it works. And um, it's it's kind of the way how I'm seeing it is like social media with its like comments and shares like incomparable to an in-person experience is like the compliment that you would get, right? Um, and the only difference is that like on social media or in person, there's no aspect of like I did not get a compliment.
Mhm.
Where on social media, if you post and you don't get likes or comments back or share or whatever, that currency of social media, um, and what releases that dopamine, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because now we feel like there's something missing, and it's missing. Um, we internalize it, right? And it's missing within us. It's missing inside of us, um, and that is huge. How, what are we? Who are we playing against? Why is this happening? Is who? Who are we playing against?
I would have to say the algorithm of social media, right? It's designed in such a way to keep us hooked, to keep us dependent and keep us on there, right? It knows exactly what we want to see and exactly what our interests are and what we like. It's actually scary to a point because sometimes I'll be having a conversation with a friend, not even online, like an in-person conversation on a certain issue or a certain topic, or sometimes I'll be on my laptop, not even on my phone, and I'll be shopping for something, and it'll just be crazy. I'll go back on my phone and I'll see memes on the same conversation I just had with my friend in person, or I'll see the same dress or the same brand and clothing that I just searched up on my laptop. And it's just crazy to know the way that the algorithms are designed to get so much information and have this much access to our life, that they know what we want to see and they know exactly what to show us. And that's why we're there, because we're like, wow, this is what I like. And we keep scrolling through it and looking through all of that.
You know what? I have a story to share about this. I've seen on CBC TV show where they created an app that has the same terms and conditions to the major social media apps. And they asked volunteers to download it, and they showed us what they could do by those permissions. Um, and here's what they were able to do. They were able to turn on your location and see where you are. They were able to listen to your conversation and what's happening. They were able to turn on your camera and see physically what's surrounding you. Um, they were able to track where did you go, how long did you spend, um, what did you do, and even what method of transportation did you use? Were you walking? Were you biking? Were you in a car and so on? And and that's really insane because we are up against something that knows more about ourselves than we do, something that has collected not just what we know consciously, but in a way what we do subconsciously, and is getting better and better at predicting what is it that we want next. And its job is to give that, to extend the length that we spend on social media. Therefore, we could see more ads. Therefore, they could make more money off us. So we're actually not becoming, we have been the product. And I can't help but think with all this scrolling down and, short videos and pictures, how is our attention span doing?
Mhm. Our attention span has been so reduced over the years because of all this, because of social media and technology. So, a study actually showed that the human attention span was 12 seconds in 2000, and it dropped to from 12 seconds to 8 seconds in 2013, which is actually just 1 second below that of a goldfish. And so this phenomena is actually known as the goldfish effect. That's how much social media has impacted our attention span, because we can access any piece of information in seconds instantly, uh, right at our fingertips. Even the news that we see and get, it's been so simplified and shortened within seconds. Our friends are actually no more than just a message away. Even videos that we see on Instagram or on TikTok, they're all under a minute. So imagine if every single day you're engaging and watching these videos and seeing this information that's been reduced so much, it affects our attention span. It reduces us to a point where we no longer have the ability in us to do tasks that require more attention and focus, like reading a book, watching a movie, paying attention in class. And to be honest, like I'm very guilty of all of this as well, right? I don't have the attention span to watch a movie. I don't remember the last time I could sit through a movie and watch the entire thing, because I'm so used to scrolling through TikTok and watching a couple of seconds videos, right? I can't sit and read a book more than a couple of pages. I can't even sometimes pay attention in class, especially when it's virtual. I have to have social media or something else open, and I always have to be doing more to focus because I can't. So
Wow. And that was 8 seconds in 2013. Our attention span, 8 seconds in 2013. I think in that time, probably we were still 3G. We did not really have as many Android and all the apps that we now could download, and the kind of experience that is now very easy, and it does not really need any effort. Like I remember back in the days, you'd have to log.
yeah,
I mean, my days is you have to log in the line so you could get internet in the first place, and then um, someone picked up the phone. You're like, no, close it. I need the internet. It disconnect and so on. And then, you would log in to, I mean, back in the days it was MSN. There wasn't really as
yeah,
much
I remember
social
those.
media.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so it it took a lot of effort to actually you needed your computer, you needed to be in that space, and you needed to do a bunch of things in order to get to internet. Now it's literally you just
everywhere,
take out
anywhere.
your phone.
Yeah,
You have Wi-Fi wherever, almost wherever you go. And internet is more accessible than ever. And again, it's 8 seconds in 2013. That's 8, 9 years ago. This is now we're at a whole other level, in screen time and usage. Even before the pandemic, but now with the pandemic, knowing that we're spending 13.1 hours on the internet and on screens, I wonder if they were to do that study again, how close to zero would our attention span be?
exactly. I wonder the same.
Um, Sorry, go on.
I said I wonder the exact same thing. What it's going to be today.
Yeah. So, what are some of the signs that social media that we could kind of pick up on that social media is impacting our mental health, and kind of become a bit more aware of that?
Yeah, it's really important to be aware of these signs and to recognize them, so you're able to get the help or make the changes that are necessary for your mental health. I would say first, if you realize that social media is starting to become a substitute for a lot of your offline social interactions. So if you were someone that would make time to go out with friends or family and to have those in-person interactions, and all of a sudden now you're withdrawn from family, from friends, and you don't want to go out, you don't want to spend time with them, and you just want to be on your phone all day, that's a sign to maybe think why that's happening. Why are you so dependent on your phone, and why are you repeating these in-person interactions? I would also say if you're constantly comparing yourself unfavorably to other people on social media and going on there makes you feel like your self-esteem has been impacted, or you feel like you have a more negative body image of yourself. I know from the stories that my friends tell me, and also just my personal experience, right? Like we spend hours, dressing up for a photo shoot, taking hundreds of pictures from the right angle with the right lighting to get that one picture that we are okay with posting, thinking it's the perfect picture. And even after we post that, it doesn't just end there. We're constantly refreshing how many comments did we get, how many likes did we get, do I look okay? And then just over analyzing our picture that we posted to a point where sometimes you might just end up deleting and removing that picture because you were never confident in that in the first place. So if you find yourself engaging in behaviors like that, and spending that much energy just for a picture or something you post on social media, it's I think that's also it's a big sign. I would also say other things like, finding that you're distracted from school, you're distracted from work, you're engaging in risky behaviors to gain likes. So using your phone while driving, losing sleep, which starts impacting your overall health, right? Because the light from the phone right before going to sleep can disrupt our sleeping patterns, and just general overall health concerns, worsening of symptoms of anxiety, depression, or any mental health concerns that you see are all signs that you should not take lightly, in my opinion, and to really figure out, is this because I'm spending too much time on social media?
I guess the reality is reducing time, it does sound like the next best step that we could do. Like reality is, again, I did deactivate my accounts and deleted social media, and at least for the time being, I do not want to be on it. And that opened up so much time in my day to do so many of the other things that I care for, and intentionally invest my time in things that I want to do. And reality is, it's not it's not a doable ask to say, you know what, delete social media or get off of it, because it does have its good, right? Like we're conducting all of this, we're having all this conversation on social media, and without it we couldn't have done that. Reality is, it does have its benefit, but I guess it's that aspect of, once it increases past 2 hours a day,
Mm-hmm.
and is when now most of the research saying that's where it becomes so risky. Um, it's not, and it's not just how long you're using it for; it's also what are you using it for. And as what you said, is like, if you're using it to compare yourself, if you're using it um, to get the external validation, right? If we're using it to um, do any of that, then it's going to contribute to, or it's going to have impacts on our mental health. Um, what else would you say, Galorana, that kind of things that we could do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do to, overcome the impacts. And as you said, sometimes I don't think the long-term solution is completely deleting it and say just get rid of social media, no one uses it, because again, it does have its benefits, right? And it's just how you're interacting with it, and for how long. So I think when it comes to reducing times, there's certain steps you can take to even make that happen, because it's easier said than done, right? We can tell people reduce the time you're spending on social media, but then how do you reduce time, right? So one
Mhm.
thing I would say is, try using apps to track how much time you spend on social media. And a lot of phones already do that, right? They give you the time usage of, and they break it down, app by app, how much time are you spending on Instagram? How much time are you spending on Facebook? How much time are you spending, on everything? And I think sometimes seeing those numbers and having that, shown to you can help you reflect, right? There was a time when I used to check my phone usage and had like 8 hours on Instagram. And I'm like, wow, that's more than half my day. What am I doing with my life? And I had to really self-evaluate and to reduce, like intentionally reduce the time that I was spending on social media, right? And certain things I did were, like you can try and just turn off your phone or not use it during certain times of the day. So for example, when you're having dinner, when you're eating, make it a habit not to bring your phone to the dinner table, not to use it when you're eating, or anytime I'm spending time with my friends. We have like a no phone policy almost. It's like a no phone rule. No one, when we're all spending time together, we're doing something, no one's going to be on their phone and doing that, and trying to be present in the moment. Try not to maybe bring your phone to bed, because that's a time where we will, it's right before bed. You don't have like motivation to do anything. You're tired, so you're gonna end up scrolling for hours and hours and won't notice how time flies by. You can also try disabling your social media notifications. So when you don't have those notifications constantly popping up and seeing your phone light up every couple of minutes, it'll stop you from wanting to reach out and chat. You could also limit the amount of times that you're checking your phone. So instead of checking it every like 5 minutes, check it every hour, check it every 2 hours, right? Or and even you could try completely deleting the apps from your phone, because I think it's a lot of work. Like sometimes when I delete my Instagram app, it's a lot of work for me to go on my laptop, log into Instagram, and then like then use it from my laptop. It's not the same feeling, so I don't do it as much as I would if it was on my phone. So those are some things I think you can do to reduce the time that you spend on social media. And
Hmm. Yeah, and anything else you would highlight on what could we do?
yeah, to replace that time now. Yeah. So if you reduce that time, you'll notice you actually have a lot of time, as you said, taking that break from social media. Even when I did, I noticed I had so much time for other things. I think one thing we should try to do is spend more time with our friends, our partners, and our family offline, and to have those in-person interactions and to value them, because I think social media sometimes it creates this illusion that we have so many friends, we have so many people, we have so many followers and options, but how many of these people that are following us are actually our friends and family? How many of these people do we actually interact with and talk to on a daily basis? And how many people have genuinely been there for you during times of needs or hardships in your life, right? Something to really reflect on. And social media makes it so easy to feel like, there's so many people, there's so many options. I can get anyone, I can have anyone. Even in relationships, I think social media has created so many problems. It's made cheating so much easier today than ever. If we feel like our
Hmm.
partner is not giving us enough time or attention, it takes no more than 2 seconds to go and message someone else and have a whole other relationship going on without your partner even knowing, because it's just that easy, right? And with the amount of people online, you feel like there's so many options. I can always get someone better, right? But the reality is, not all of those people might be right for you. Not all those people will be there for you and know you at that level. But that's where we begin to ignore and not appreciate our real life relationships.
That's very true. That recalls a research that I read, and what they looked at is, how many people or how many friends or followers did people have on their social media platform, and then um it's usually 500 plus, um and sometimes thousands. And what they ask them is like, in case of an emergency, in case of something went wrong, in case of something you really need the help of others, how many of those would you be able to reach out to?
Mhm.
And or followers, but are they really friends? Can we reach out to them when we need them? And even when we're on social media, could we do we even talk to them, or do we
Mhm.
just have them there and have everyone there and we don't even
Yeah.
communicate with them? Um, anything else that we could also do to kind of increase or feel a bit increase our happiness level or feel a bit better, um, and maybe overcome the fear of missing out?
I think trying to practice gratitude, making time in our life for reflection, for gratitude, and you might try keeping a gratitude journal and writing down and keeping track of the positives in your life. Sometimes that helps people when they write down, they have to think about things and they actually see, I do have a lot to be grateful in my life. I have a lot of reasons to be happy, and I don't need to seek that external validation and that feeling good, from social media, from those likes and those comments, right? You can also try practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness is any activity or anything that you do that helps you focus on that present moment. So you don't think about the past, you don't think about the future, you're just focusing in on that present moment. So you can try doing things like deep breathing exercises, yoga, exercise, meditation, anything that for you personally helps you focus in on the present moment. And that helps you overcome that fear of missing out because you're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking what's going on. You're just focusing on yourself and that present, right? And
Mm.
you can also try filling in the time that you have from social media with other offline activities, right? So aside from spending time with your family, your friends, and your relationships, find a new hobby, play sports, go out on walks, learn a new language, volunteer, do anything that keeps you so occupied in person that you don't even have the time to check your phone or to use social media as much as you would have before.
Uh, yeah, technically do all the other thing that you would want to do, but social media is holding you back from doing it. Um, Glorana, who can support newcomers with who are struggling with social media usage or dependency or any kind of issues regarding social media, self-esteem and so on?
I think we can all play a role in helping newcomers with social media and the mental health concerns that have come about because of it. Whether we're helping at the level of an organization or as a community or even just as family or friends. But at the end of the day, I think the internal work and those changes have to come from the individuals themselves. They have to
Mm-hmm.
be willing to make those positive changes, in their life.
How do I know that I'm ready
Mhm.
to take actions?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Because you could know that you need to do this, but how do you know when you actually need to take this action? I think when you feel like you need to take a break, right? There might be certain circumstances in your life or a certain situation that drives you to that point, but I think just listening to that inner voice that's telling you you need to take a break from social media, you need to spend time doing other things. So as soon as you start having those feelings, I think just trusting those and knowing, it's time, like I need to take a break away from all of this. Yeah, and I think in terms of supporting newcomers, there's a lot that we can do. I think providing one-on-one counseling, and that's something that as mental health and wellness leads, we're here for to do that. But I think what's important with that piece is that we really connect with our clients on these issues and share our personal struggles, like how we are today, so that they're not alone, so that they don't feel afraid, they don't feel embarrassed to talk about these things and to talk about how something like social media is impacting their mental health, because there's also a stigma around that, right? To
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge and say, yeah, it's social media. That's something like social media is impacting my mental health and has caused me to do so much, right? It's hard to accept and to come about that. So creating that safe space and that environment for people to open up about that issue. And other things we can do is to have workshops, to have resources, to educate newcomers about the mental health impacts and to show them the realities of social media and the other alternatives that they have, because sometimes the countries that they come from or the parts of the world that they might come from, they might not be exposed to these things at the same level as we have in the West, right? I remember seeing certain videos recently on Instagram where it would show how certain videos even and how the body was edited and transformed to show the final product and what it was before and after. And I was amazed at how almost like how advanced these editing apps and these technologies are, that you can even edit videos and your entire body to look differently, right? So if we show them these videos, we show them the before and afters, and we show them the reality, I think it's going to make it's a big impact.
I think that educational piece is really important, that psychoeducational in a way, um, because for most parts we don't even know that this is happening. We don't even know what's happening, right? What's impacting to all of this. And again, I would, when I use the example of the newer generation, right? Because they now grow up with phones around. It's the first generation to have that experience. And so uh, you may not even know where it's coming from. You're just feeling down, you're just not feeling well, and you don't know where that is coming from. And I'm not saying everything is coming from social media. I guess what I'm saying is it has a really big role to play, and that aspect that we talked about earlier of, you know, in each like, in each comment, you get the dopamine, so you're going more and more and doing it not because you're choosing to, but because pretty much we're on autopilot and our brain is doing it for us. Our brain has the ability to remember what made us feel good and give it to us whenever we need to, um, and whenever we want to feel good, right? And that example that we spoke about is like when we're not feeling emotionally well, um, what we tend to do is go on social media because we know certain when I post something and I get likes, then I'm gonna feel good. I'm gonna feel better. And then I get stuck in the rabbit hole versus the algorithm, right? So I think that that psychoeducation was very important because it even opens the eye on what's happening, and then you could make an intentional decision. I mean, if you intentionally decide that you want to spend 8 hours on social media, go for it. That is an intentional decision that you made, and if you think that's what's important for your life and what's would help you, and I mean, you may have a career that is specifically doing things on social media, right? So it's like if it's an intentional decision, by all means, go for it. But if it's not, and you don't know what's happening, and you can't understand why it's going that way, then that educational piece is so important. Um, how about the parents of the newcomer? What would you say? Any reminder or any way to kind of give them another way to think about it? Because that usually is a big challenge with the parents as well.
It is. It's a big challenge for newcomer parents, especially when you're already navigating a new country, a new system, and all of the challenges that you're facing as a newcomer. And then on top of that, having to monitor the challenges that your child might be going through with social media. But I think it's really important to make time for that as a newcomer parent because as much as you're going through your own personal challenges and navigating that, your child is also going through that and they're more vulnerable and more exposed to social media and its impacts, right? Because they're also a newcomer to this country and they want to fit in and have a certain image and look a certain way on social media, even more so because they're new and they want to have that presence. But I think having these open conversations with your child and monitoring and see what they're doing, how much time are they spending, and being involved as a parent is very important and can go a long way. And you don't want to come off as too controlling because again that's a big clash that happens between newcomers parents and children, that my child is becoming more westernized and they're getting out of my hands and they don't listen to me, right? But as a child as well, you want to understand from their perspective that you don't want to be controlling, you don't want to restrict their freedom and understand the challenges they're going through in settling in a new country, but just try having open conversations, try being like a friend with them so that they come to you to share their problems.
Yeah, and you know what I would say also, uh, being a role model is really important. I've seen in so many places like the parent is on their phone asking the kids to get off their phone, and I'm like, how's this working, right? Or like the parent is on the dinner table on their phone asking everyone to put their phone away, and I'm like, you can't parent if you're not being a role model. They're gonna see you and do the same thing.
Yeah,
um and so kind of taking or intentionally thinking that I'm gonna be a role model, so whatever I do my kids are likely to repeat. And that could also be as like, what if I put my phone away and do certain activities like the one that you suggested, right? Like mindfulness is so huge. um I don't know, but if you want to do yoga, try to engage your kid. See if your kid want to do it with you. Um, and maybe that is a way of also role modeling without even coming off as controlling, right? Like, do you want to do this with me? Can we schedule time to do this together? Um, and and that even brings the relationship closer. We're coming to an end with our session today, and I guess my question to you is, from your work with newcomers, what messages would you like to share with us today?
Mhm. I want to say that social media is not everything. It's not reality. I know it's very easy to get consumed into this idea of living your life for the sake of social media, and especially as a newcomer, right? Trying to have that presence to show that you fit in and you have this lifestyle and you can be just like everyone else. And I've been stuck there at one point in my life too, right? You go out to certain restaurants or certain places just so you can get a snap, just so you can get a story or a picture, right? You spend hours dressing up and looking a certain way and taking hundreds of pictures to have the perfect post. You feel like that social media is your connection to the world. It's almost like your portfolio to show who you are, who your worth is, how you fit into society. But we really need to take a step back and realize that social media is not reality. It's not everything, and it can't be everything. We need to step outside of that illusion and focus on our real connections and the people around us, the people who actually love and care for us and who know us and have been there for us through everything, and focus on building these real lifestyles, these real careers, and these real families, not what social media tells us is the ideal.
Well said. Well said. Uh, I guess I can't help but, well, I've watched The Social Dilemma on Netflix, which is, for those who have not watched it, is an amazing documentary with people who are really involved with social media and were president, vice president, and so on, and on social media platforms. Um, and they really speak to how much we've become dependent on social media. And when you said, it's not everything and it's not reality, it's kind of like social media is consuming us. And again, they speak to how we're the product. I would invite everyone to really watch it, because it all comes down to me is like, if you want to make an intentional decision about something, as long as it's intentional and you think it's beneficial for you, then go for it. So, but I feel like that education piece is really so important for all of us, so we kind of take a step back and look at what's happening, and look, if we want to be a part of all of this, and if we do, how much do we want to invest of our time to be a part of it? So thank you so much, Glorana, for joining me today. Just a reminder for everyone of our audience, you can reach out to me or Glorana using our email, wellness@niche.ca. We will put that in the comments below, and please send us any questions using social media on our Facebook page account. You could also visit our website, and you could also just give me a call, and we're happy to support you through that as well. And just a reminder that we do provide one-on-one counseling services, and it's all free for. So just reach out. To that, it has come to an end. Thank you, Glorana, again. I would love to have you again and discuss more mental health related topics.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Tarek. This was such a great experience to be able to have this conversation with you and learn from you as well. And just echoing what you said, for everyone to know that we are here, as the mental health and wellness leads here at Niche. And please feel free to connect with us, to reach out to us by email, and make use of the supports that we have available, the one-on-one supportive counseling. We have group sessions as well that will be taking place soon. So just reach out to us and learn more about what supports we have and how we can help you navigate these issues.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Glorana, and to our audience, thanks for watching. This has been an amazing journey, and it always fascinating to me each time I do those interviews and just learn so much and talk so much um, and engage in a lot of new knowledge. So thanks a lot for watching us and for giving us your time. And I will see you again in 2 weeks from now, um, 2 Thursdays away at 1 p.m. Until then, please stay safe.